And with that, we are now departing Space Center Houston on our way to NASA's Johnson Space Center, which is one of 10 NASA field centers and has been the home of mission control for over 50 years. Back in 1961, NASA was granted new funding for a brand new field center that would later be known as the Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center, or JSC for short, which is what we're headed to now. As you can imagine, many cities are interested in becoming the heart of human spaceflight. NASA eventually selected Houston, Texas because of its established infrastructure, growing ship channel, and large engineering sector. And now we're going to be heading through a small tunnel here to enter JSC, so if you could, please keep your voices down for me, as we don't want to make any loud noises that might echo. As we exit the tunnel, if you do take a peek to the left-hand side of the tram, you will see a large pasture which does contain our world-famous Texas Longhorns. We'll get a closer look in just a moment, don't you worry. Back on topic, one of the main goals of Johnson Space Center was to create a more advanced mission control center. Through the Mercury program and up through Gemini 3, everything was launched and controlled out of Cape Canaveral, Florida, where Kennedy Space Center is. However, NASA was expanding rapidly to meet President Kennedy's challenge to land on the moon by the end of the 1960s. With future expansion in mind, NASA decided to separate the launch pad from the mission control room. This new facility, JSC, officially opened its doors on April 9, 1965. The first flight controllers at JSC were eager to tackle a new task of sending humans into space. However, 1960s technology was very limited. The 5 IBM mainframe computers took up an entire room and weighed over 2,000 pounds, but their memory cores were only able to process about 8 megabytes each, that's 40 megabytes total. If you put that into perspective, about 8 photos on your phone is about the same as 8 megabytes. These top-of-the-line computers couldn't do complicated math needed to keep astronauts in orbit. This required the flight controllers to use papers, pencils, and slide rulers to make the calculations needed for each mission. So, again, on our left, we'll get a much closer look at those Longhorns as they beat the heat under the shade. And on the right, this will be our George W.S. Abbey Rocket Park, which is the destination of another tour here at Space Center Houston, which some of you might have already done today. We are not going to be stopping here, though once we do return back to Space Center Houston, you guys can feel free to board that tour, completely free of charge, reservation free. Simply head into the line once you are ready. And keep your eyes peeled for a calf among those Longhorns. We did have one be born within the last couple of months. I'll point him out if I can see him. As we do pass by Rocket Park, I'd like to point out those 2 rockets we can see from the tram. Those are both mock-ups, but they are realistic to their historical counterparts. That closer of the 2 sitting on that yellow scaffolding is known as the Little Joe 2, which is a test rocket intended to test emergency systems prior to a mission, in particular the Apollo missions. That second little 2 that is noticeably thinner and mostly black and white is the Mercury Redstone, which is the very same kind of rocket that brought Alan Shepard to space, who was the very first American astronaut. During our tour today, you may notice deer and other wildlife here on campus. That is because JSC is also a wildlife preserve on top of being a world-leading space center with more than 250 white-tailed deer living here. In fact, we can see 2 fawns on our left and right over here, trailing their mama. As beautiful as those creatures are, we also have many other animals here, such as rabbits, turtles, and even an alligator named MECO, which, like most things here at NASA, is an acronym. That is MECO, standing for Main Engine Cutoff. If you do want to keep your eyes peeled for more deer, I would recommend trying to keep your eyes towards the trees and the buildings. I like to hang out in the shade of those. I'll point them out if I see them. Now ahead on the right, this large building here is Building 45, also known as the Project Engineering Building. Back in the 1960s, this building led the design, construction, and coordinated activities with other NASA centers and contractors. Additionally, this building housed the Office of Operations for space flight programs, specifically the Gemini missions and the Apollo spacecraft. These offices here in this building represented the programming hub of human spaceflight here at JSC back in the 60s. This building also housed the Mission Evaluation Room, or MER, which provided real-time engineering support for the Mission Control Center in Building 30, which we are on our way to, and housed one of those two mainframe computers that I mentioned earlier. Today, Building 45 houses one of JSC's on-site libraries, filled with thousands of ebooks as well as many original JSC documents, such as mission transcripts. And coming up here on the right-hand side of our tram is the Christopher C. Craft Jr. Mission Control Center, which is our main destination for today. It was named in 2011 to honor the first flight directive for American spaceflight. In addition to developing the entire concept of mission control and designing the control room, Christopher Craft served as one of the lead flight directors during the Mercury program and head of mission operations for the Gemini and Apollo programs. This building controlled early spaceflight missions beginning in 1965 with Gemini 4, and is still in use today for the International Space Station and commercial crew program missions. So, as you can imagine, this building is incredibly important both today and historically, so for that reason, we do have some special ground rules for this building. We are going to be headed up to a special presentation room once we are inside, and we will not be allowing any large bags, backpacks, purses, or any sort of consumable item up into that room. I'll be more specific about what to do with those items once we are inside, though I just want to let you guys know to start preparing to leave those things behind now, as we will not allow them upstairs. We will also not be allowing any sort of flash photography or recording. We of course love our pictures and videos for people to take here. That's how we know you're interested. But please make sure we don't have any flash on those, as we do have sensitive equipment that we want to take care of. Also, please try to keep your voices to a reasonable level. Not saying you can't talk, that's perfectly okay. Just please no loud laughing or yelling. As this is an operational government building, we don't want to disturb any employees that might be working here today, as they are doing incredibly important work for spaceflight. And finally, as we pull up to the drop-off destination, once they do come to a full and complete stop, please wait till you see me come around on the right-hand side of the tram. I'm going to dismiss us car by car, and then we can all go in together. So again, once you do come to a stop, please hang out for just a moment.